there, my name is Pam Hart. I am the Executive Director here at the Center for Animal Law Studies. And joining me today is Erica Lyman. She is a professor and director at our Environmental Law Program. Welcome, Erica.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on World Health Day. And for those of you watching, could you please explain to us all what is World Health Day and why does it matter to your work?
Sure, thanks, Pam. So to be honest, this is the first year World Health Day has really fallen on my radar. But it is a day designated by the World Health Organization as a Global Health Awareness Day. Each year there's a theme. This year the theme is sort of honoring the work that nurses and midwives do, which obviously is particularly relevant. And we owe all of those folks a shout out. In terms of my work as an international wildlife lawyer, the day seems particularly relevant because obviously the pandemic, although maybe we have some uncertainty about the exact species involved, it is a zoonotic disease that has been transmitted from wildlife to humans. And so that raises, for all of us who work in this community and affected by the pandemic, concerns about our relationship with wildlife, and is this a time in which we really need to rethink sort of how we engage with wildlife and our intimacy with wildlife?
Yeah, that's so important to recognize that. And as attorneys and professors, of course, we've been talking lately about the link between wildlife exploitation and the current pandemic, but there's also many factors that contribute to the increase of this emergence of zoonosis. And we talk about it in our other work, particularly related to industrial factory farms, deforestation and land changes, as well as overuse of antibiotics. With that broad landscape, as a legal scholar and a legal expert, how has the current state of affairs changed what your focus might be in the future?
Well, you're right. There are multiple factors that come together that I think we can all agree increase the risk of pandemics. We're seeing it now, this one likely because of sort of direct exploitation of wildlife. But we are living in close proximity and closer proximity with wildlife. We engage intimately with animals in all sorts of ways. And all of those relationships bring a certain risk of zoonotic disease. I think for us in the clinic, we've always worked on behalf of the protection of wildlife and the environment. And so fundamentally, this doesn't change what we do. We're always going to work toward the development of the law, to support implementation of the law, defend the integrity of the law, and support enforcement of the law as sort of the broad wheelhouse of work we do. And that's always going to be for the benefit of wildlife and the environment. And so what I think shifts a little bit is sort of the basis for the work and the ability that we have to move forward with precautionary long-term strategic thinking. It's clear that we need to engage in policy shifts at this moment, in order to be responsive to the risks and in order to manage and in fact reduce probably our intimacy and interactions with wildlife so that wildlife are safe and so that humans are safe.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of really good sense. And this week it was very interesting. We had news come out of the Brooklyn Zoo where Nadia, a tiger, just tested positive for COVID-19. Given that, how does that relate, or what lessons can we learn within our legal framework of what needs to change, what needs to be addressed? how does that impact your work?
Well, so it's interesting. And I think there are likely maybe a few other big cats at the zoo who have COVID-19, or at least that's the suggestion in some of the articles I've read. For me, it should cause us to think very seriously and to reflect on our own, as Americans, frankly, our own intimacy with exotic animals. A lot of the news and the media around this particular pandemic have focused on wet markets. And that's fair. It's a likely source of transmission, but it sort of deflects our responsibility for reducing risks of zoonotic disease transmission. And we kind of lost in the story here is, the fact that Americans regularly, to the tune of hundreds of thousands, invite wild animals and exotic animals into our homes as pets. So we too often have these very intimate relationships with wildlife. And it's not just something that happens in wet markets, or, in China or in Southeast Asia. There's sort of a global responsibility to rethink our relationship with exotic animals. And I think that's true from a human health perspective. I think that's true from a conservation perspective. We have, just months before the start of this pandemic, there's international scientific consensus that human exploitation is one of the greatest drivers of the extinction crisis. Those two threads together really should have us thinking about, what moving forward in a precautionary and strategic way, what do we imagine as the policy shifts that are necessary to be responsive to the crisis? And that's the kind of work we're going to do in the clinic. We actually just had a great class last week in our clinic class where, the students, we just asked the students, you're in charge of an organization, and what do you do in response to the crisis? If you are, working on a strategic plan moving forward, what are the policy choices that you'd envision, and how would you work toward those choices? And I think, the fact that we have the ability to think through that with students who are going to be on the front lines of these kinds of events into the future is a special place to be right now. And it sort of gives us, an opportunity to feel like we're doing something even when we're all stuck in our homes.
Right, right. And that's such a great reminder. And it leads me to talk a little bit about a little bit of a silver lining, some good news amidst all of this challenge and uncertainty. And that was last week, we announced that we are launching a brand new international wildlife law clinic that you will be heading up and running next fall. And here at the Center for Animal Law Studies, our mission is to educate the next generation of animal law attorneys. So there's a fantastic synergy with that mission, with our animal law program, with the environmental law program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that clinic and what the students will be focusing on?
Sure. This is a clinic that will be dedicated space for LLM students to work on international wildlife issues. And this is particularly special and exciting for me because we have these LLM students who come to Lewis and Clark looking to sort of enhance their understanding of animal law, or transition a career and move into animal law. And for a lot of folks who are coming from all different places around the world, a significant piece of that is often wildlife law and the relationship to wildlife that people have in the countries where they're coming from. So we will focus on sort of the work that we do in the existing clinic already, but geared toward people who are already lawyers, and who maybe sort of bring added experience, international experiences to the work. So what does it look like? A lot of our work in the clinic and my work as an international wildlife lawyer, for example, focuses on working to combat wildlife trafficking. Um, what does it look like in a particular LLM student's country? Is it a transit country? Is it a source country for wildlife? Is it a demand country? And taking those different factors into account, what should the law look like in order to create a stronger regulatory landscape? Is it oftentimes we have prosecutors and judges who are part of the program. So working with them to take back knowledge about wildlife law and international best practices for strengthening wildlife crime cases. To me, that's going to be an incredible legacy for the world moving forward. And, obviously it will be impactful in light of this crisis, to the extent that we're navigating this relationship between humans and wildlife and international law and domestic law as well. It is in the wildlife space, it is designed to prohibit, limit, or regulate our relationship and interactions with wildlife. And so how do we do that smartly and safely?
Right. And we're really excited about this. And for those of you are watching and don't know, we have the first and only animal law LLM program in the world. We've educated more than 50 attorneys from over 20 countries. So do you see a synergy with your work, given the fact that we have new students coming in all the time, and then they go on to graduate and they disperse all over the world? Do you see an opportunity to work with current students and our graduates in a way that we can really impact international advancement of animal protection?
This is one of the best parts of being a teacher is that you get to spend time with these students, especially in the clinic where our work is very one-on-one or small group focused. So you get to know students really well and you understand their passions, their interests. And then I go out in the world as a practicing wildlife lawyer, and I see former students sitting at the table with me. I see them at international meetings, living their dreams and sort of executing on their passions. And I think that this clinic is just going to have an exponential impact in that regard. It's a wonderful opportunity for students, and I have to say it's just very enjoyable to see our alums out in the world practicing international law.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I so appreciate your time today and sharing your wisdom and your expertise on the current pandemic, but also talking about the future and the hope for the future through education and using the legal system. Is there anything I forgot or anything else you would like to add on World Health Day today?
No, I don't think so. Not in terms of the substance, except that everybody should stay safe, think about wildlife, think about exotic animals and our relationship with them, and let's make some changes to reduce these risks.
All right, wonderful. Thanks so much, Erica, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.